before the legions of Rome marched north before imposing border walls and the names of emperors filled maps. There was a land of diverse people. This region, later known as Germania, was not a single entity but rather a patchwork of independent tribes. Our knowledge of this era is shaped by limitations, few written accounts from within Germania itself. Instead, we rely on Roman writings, archaeological finds, and comparative studies of similar cultures to understand the societies that thrived beyond the Rhine before Rome's influence. This is a view of their world. The landscape of Germania was one of great variation. Dense forests covered vast areas, offering shelter and resources, while marshes presented obstacles and opportunities. River systems such as the Rhine and Elbe acted as boundaries and communication routes. Open plains in some regions provided more space for farming or grazing. These environments profoundly shaped the distribution and lives of the tribes. In some areas, smaller dispersed settlements predominated, reflecting a reliance on hunting, gathering, and limited agriculture suited to forested areas. Other regions supported larger fortified settlements where resources were more abundant or the land required collective defense. The diverse environments highlighted the economic focus of various groups. Some tribes inhabiting forested regions practiced limited agriculture. They relied more heavily on hunting and gathering, or on raising smaller numbers of animals such as pigs. Others situated in open areas developed pastoral systems, moving herds of cattle, sheep, and goats across the land. The way of life affected not only what was produced but also how these groups interacted, which in turn influenced their tribal cultures. This land was home to a multitude of tribes. The Suevi, known for their mobile warbands, occupied a large area in central Germania, a large area with varied geography that was also known for its mobility and lack of unified settlement. Further north, the Cherushi occupied the lands along the Weser River, with some evidence suggesting a more settled nature and an organized political system that gave rise to a level of influence over their neighboring tribe. The Cimbri and Teutones, frequently mentioned in Roman accounts, were notable for their large-scale migrations and movements towards the Roman frontiers. Within each tribe, social structures varied. Most tribes were organized into chiefdoms ruled by a leader whose power was often based on military prowess, while some groups showed signs of having a council with elders holding more power. Warriors held a significant position in society. They were not only essential for defense, but also played a vital role in defining the group's identity. Kinship was a basis of tribal organization, with families and clans forming the basic unit of these societies. Interaction between these tribes was characterized by shifting alliances and frequent conflicts. These conflicts were not only about conquest, but often served as mechanisms to maintain the balance of power, settle disputes, or acquire resources. Migrations were also common, driven by population pressures, climate change, or clashes with neighboring tribes, which could in turn displace other tribes, creating a cascade effect. These movements often led to further interaction and conflict, creating the tribal landscape. Although agriculture was practiced, it was not the only economic driver. Animal husbandry, especially cattle, pigs, and sheep, was vital. Metallurgy, although not as developed as in other regions, produced practical tools and iron weapons. Pottery was made for storage and cooking. Hunting provided food and valuable resources such as animal skins. Trade, although limited, occurred between tribes and beyond, with goods such as amber, furs, and salt being exchanged. Daily life varied greatly depending on a person's role in their tribe. Warriors prepared for conflict or went on hunting expeditions. Farmers tended their lands, cultivating crops or raising livestock. Craftsmen made tools, pottery, and other items necessary for daily life. These tasks were performed within kinship groups, with shared labor, communal responsibilities, and a clear division of labor. Levels of technology and craftsmanship varied among different groups. Although metalworking was common, evidence of more complex crafts such as elaborate jewelry is less common than in other regions of the time. Trade created links between different groups and between regions, suggesting a degree of mobility and exchange that went beyond the tribal boundaries of the time. Understanding the spiritual beliefs of these tribes presents a challenge due to limited written records. However, archaeological discoveries offer some insights. Burial practices, for example, reveal a belief in some form of afterlife or reverence for the dead, with items often buried alongside the deceased. Offerings found in marshes or sacred groves indicate rituals with likely religious overtones, but interpretations of the reasons behind these offerings vary. The diversity of these rituals and their locations indicate varied beliefs. What is apparent is that these practices were central to their lives, connecting them with the spiritual realm, the natural world, and the cycles of life and death. They were not expressions of a unified faith, but a range of traditions that varied based on location and group identity. The role of shamans or ritual specialists, as evidenced by some finds, was likely important in these practices, likely serving as intermediaries between the human world and the spiritual realm. Long before the Roman legions entered Germania, the tribes interacted with their neighbors, particularly to the west, where some contact was made with Celtic peoples. These groups influenced and were influenced by each other. These interactions are evident in shared archaeological finds and trade. Over time, Roman traders and military scouts gradually entered the region, leading to more detailed reports of the tribes. These early encounters began a period of more direct interaction. This increased interaction provided the information needed to detail the complexities of these cultures. As more of these reports reached Rome, the region and its tribes became more of a point of interest. These tribes, with their varied practices and independent natures, created a region ripe for a new era of conflict. These societies and systems that developed over the centuries set the stage for the large-scale impacts that would come with the expansion of the Roman Empire.